Welcome to the first meeting of this month. Let's all rise for a silent prayer.
Thank you.
I would request all of you to kindly stand up and observe a minute of silence in prayer for the departed souls of NYN. Friends, today we have a NAB speaker for the day. As we all know, this is something connected with nature. He will be introduced formally. At the current circumstances prevailing in our state, I think the topic has a lot of relevance because man, nature, insects, birds, animals, everything. And I'm sure that being such a learned speaker, he would enlighten us more on the subject. To formally introduce him and welcome the gathering, I would request our treasurer, Mr. Dilip Narayanan, to kindly come forward.
Distinguished President, Mr. Bibu Punuran, Honorary Secretary, Dr. Anil Joseph, esteemed Speaker, Dr. K.V. Sajeev, Vice President and Program Committee Chair, RGS Khalid, dear KMA members, past presidents, Managing Committee members, and my dear students. Good evening. Now, Vibhu has asked us to observe 1 minute of silence. This has brought to me a story which is well circulated in the social media. Durandam Pedirangia Mundakaile Vellaramala School Vellaran Kalugal in the Varajaru. So digital magazine, school magazine. അതിൽ ലയ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ എഴുതിയ ഒരു കുട്ടി എഴുതിയൊരു പ്രവചന സ്വഭാവമുള്ളൊരു കഥയെക്കുറിച്ച് കഥ പറയുന്നുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. സോ ഐ ജസ്റ്റ് റീഡ് ദാറ്റ് സ്റ്റോറി. അനശ്വരിയും അലങ്കൃതയും ലയയും എന്ന 3 പെൺകുട്ടികൾ ഈ വെള്ളച്ചാട്ടം കാണാൻ പോയപ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടായതാണ് കഥ. കഥ എങ്ങനെയാണ് തുടങ്ങുന്നത്? ഐ ജസ്റ്റ് റീഡ് ദ ഇനീഷ്യൽ പാരഗ്രാഫ്. മഴയായതിനാൽ വെള്ളം കലങ്ങി തുടങ്ങി. അതുകൊണ്ട് വെള്ളത്തിൽ ഇറങ്ങേണ്ട എന്ന് തീരുമാനിച്ചു. അങ്ങനെ വെള്ളച്ചാട്ടത്തിന്റെ മനോഹാരിത ആസ്വദിക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് ഒരു കിളി അവിടേക്ക് വന്നത്. ആ കിളി ഒരു വിചിത്രമായിരുന്നു. ആ കിളിക്ക് സംസാരിക്കാൻ കഴിയുമായിരുന്നു. അത് അവരോട് പറഞ്ഞു, നിങ്ങൾ ഇവിടെ നിന്ന് വേഗം രക്ഷപ്പെട്ടോളൂ. കുട്ടികളെ, ഇവിടെ വലിയൊരു ആപത്ത് വരാൻ പോകുന്നു. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് രക്ഷപ്പെടണമെങ്കിൽ വേഗം ഇവിടെ നിന്ന് ഓടിപ്പോയിക്കോളും എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ആ കിളി അവിടെ നിന്ന് പറന്നുപോയി. കിളി പറഞ്ഞതിന്റെ പൊരുൾ മനസ്സിലായില്ലെങ്കിലും അവിടെ നിന്ന് കുട്ടികൾ ഓടാൻ തുടങ്ങി. ഇതാണ് the starting of that story. And they ran off, and when they looked back, there was a landslide happening. This was the story came in that magazine of the same school, which is a epicenter of this. So so the point I was trying to make is, like that kili, the nature gives you lessons. And today we have an esteemed speaker who's going to give us a lessons related to management and life from nature. And at these circumstances, I congratulate Al-Jaz Khalid for finding such a speaker and topic, which is very, very, very important. And as businesses, as responsible businesses and managers, practicing managers, it's our responsibility to take care of Mother Nature. And sustainability is a very trust, it should be a trust area. And KMA, like from the last year onwards, even though we have started earlier, was started focusing on sustainability and ESG practices. And we'll be, under the leadership of Vibhu, will be continuing that efforts. And let me take this opportunity to briefly introduce Dr. T.V. Sajeev. I have heard him once. He's an excellent storyteller. He's a scientist, currently attached to Kerala Forest Research Institute as chief scientist. He has more than 28 years of experience in the forest entomology, landscape fragmentation, population dynamics of forest insects, and invasion biology. He was a former coordinator of the Asia Pacific Forest Invasive Species Network, a collaborative alliance of 33 countries in the Asia Pacific region, functioning under the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. He has been recently nominated by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change as a national focal point for the Asia Pacific Forest Invasive Species Network. Currently, he coordinates a nodal center for biological invasions at the KFRI, which deals with biological invasion issues in Kerala. He is actively engaging in developing management strategies against the invasion of the giant African snail and red slider turtles, which came to India from Africa and Mexico respectively. So his research repository includes 60 papers in national and international journals, books, proceedings of workshops and research reports. He is an author of 6 books. More than 106 students have successfully completed their MSc dissertation under various topics related with entomology, forestry, etc. He also been part of editing and publishing of bi-monthly newsletter, Invasives. He got an opportunity to organize 18 training programs, workshops in India, China, Bhutan, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Philippines, Nepal, and Thailand, and various other countries. I just taken some of the things. He's an eminent scientist, and generally when we say scientist, I told him also that day, he'll think that they all talk something which we don't understand. But that day he was very, like a storyteller. We got all the complex subjects and the lessons, and he could relate to the daily life. So welcome, on behalf of all of us sitting here and on behalf of the managing committee, I formally welcome Dr. T.V. Sajeev to this evening lecture. I welcome all of you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, once again. Speaker of the day, Dr. Sajeev, Honorary Secretary, and Dr. Anna Joseph. Our Treasurer, Dilip Narayan, Program Committee Chair and Vice President, Mr. Al-Jaz Khalid, all other Managing Committee members, past President, and dear KMA members, dear students, and all gathered here. was just telling a few of our friends, see, in KMA, we have this system of, the managing committee members. We sit together and then we decide upon what topic, which speaker to invite and all that. And the last 2 months after this KMA year has started, we've been lucky to get stalwart speakers. And today too is no exception. We have been able to get Dr. Sajeev, and that too, I think the timing was kind of right, because although it is a disaster that has happened in Wayanad, he's speaking on nature and all that. And I would credit more than our program committee chair. He takes things to the minutest point to see that we get very interesting speakers. But this time I would like to thank our treasurer, Mr. Dilip Narayanan, for having roped in Dr. Sajeev, because Dilip had heard him earlier and he knows that Dr. Sajeev can deliver a beautiful address to KMA on the topic, and that is how we are here. So thank you very much, Dilip, for having brought him here, and thank you, Algiers, too. Coming to some personal experiences on nature, I would say a few years back, as part of one of our Rotary, we have something called Vanadarshan in our club. So we went to the Silent Valley, and in the Silent Valley, in this town called Attapadi, just at the entrance of the Silent Valley, there is this forest guest house. And we had booked the rooms there through some of the government contacts. But there is a rule in the government that, if supposing some of the top brass of the forest department comes there, then those rooms are not available. So it so happened that, fortunately or unfortunately, that particular evening, I think somebody from the national level came, and all the rooms in that place were taken up, and we had drove all the way from Cochin into Attapadi. We were at the mouth of the Silent Valley, where we should have stayed, and there was no way we could go anywhere because there are no rooms anywhere else. Anyway, since we were also recommended by somebody very high in the government sector, they gave us a very special permission to drive through the Silent Valley and go deep into the forest and camp in the night over there. So probably doctor knows the place very well, and so that 20-21 kilometer road into the forest, they allowed us. This was a very special case. They allowed us to get into the forest, and I think driving into that 20-21 kilometers into the forest must have taken us at least 1.5 to 2 hours, because practically there is no road, or the road is very bad. Anyway, the moment we reached there, there's a building there. There's no electricity, there's no water, there's nothing. But then water comes out of gravity there are a couple of toilets, and then there are these the solar lanterns. So once the solar power is gone, there's no light. But then one thing that, per se, till that time, I used to think, what is wrong with all these environmentalists? Why are they shouting, crying horse for not building a dam at the Silent Valley site? And that was happening over the years. But that night when we camped there, we understood what nature is really. The silence of the Silent Valley, the frogs, the sounds coming from the insects, frogs, and what a sight it was. And there was a tower next to it, so in the morning, the early morning, we could get up and go atop the tower and see the entire Silent Valley, which was a very rare occasion for me, at least. I'm sure that many people must not have had that kind of an experience. So nature has its own ways, or its beauty, I would say. And I was discussing with Dr. Sajeev some time back, he was telling us as to how these animals and birds and even insects know when a calamity is coming. And I think even our own human beings know that. But we city dwellers probably have lost this kind of senses, I would say, instincts, I would say. Because once again, I had this opportunity to stay within the Tekadi forest. And the next day morning, deep inside the forest, the next day morning, one of those Adivasis took us again into the forest, deep into the forest, but we are supposed to go only with them. And then suddenly this man, he's supposed to be a forest guard, but then he's an Adivasi by profession, and he asked us to stop and asked us to keep silent. And he asked us, can you get any smell? We said no. And the point is, he said, there are elephants nearby. And he asked us to go back to our small camp where we were staying. So, what I'm trying to tell you is, man also has got that instinct within himself. But probably people like us do not have that because we are city dwellers and we've lost all that. Or maybe we have evolved, our species has evolved out of all that. Only probably people staying close to nature get all this. And then I'm sure that Doctor is going to speak to you about the ants and their wisdom, the way they look after themselves even during the rains or the monsoons or the sunshine, the way they divide their duties and look at it, or how birds fly from one continent to the other. There are so many things that we have to learn from nature which man still cannot, despite we being in the AI era. And it's unfortunate that such things like this are happening today in our state, which we call God's own country. My maternal house is in the heart of Kutanad, and I think over the last few years, it was always a very nice place to go and stay overnight. But over the last few years, if you look at it, most of the houses in Kutanad are now accessible by road. But the bad side of the story is that every year, I think in the last few years especially, my mom's house has to be renovated because there is a flood. Inevitably there is a flood and there is dirt, everything coming into the house. Although it is on a relatively higher platform, this is happening, and every year this house is filled with mud and mud during the monsoons, and it has to be washed, cleaned, painted, everything is happening. I think this is because we have been building roads to our conveniences and things like that, but then that is the other way in which nature is also punishing us. Anyway, I'm sure that we're going to have a very interesting speech from Dr. Sajeev in today's scenario. I'm sure that many of us would have lots of questions to ask him too. So, once again, thank you, Doctor, for accepting our invitation and coming all the way from Trichur to address us. Thank you very much, and be welcome.
Respected President and my friends on the dais, dear friends, thank you for inviting me. I come from a place called the Kerala Forest Research Institute. We study forests, and one of the first questions which people ask us is that while there are not many issues outside forests, why are you studying forests? എന്തിനാണ് കാടിനെ കുറിച്ച് പഠിക്കുന്നത്? I'll just answer that and go a bit fast because we have very little time. I have some 10-15 slides, and then I will really love some time to be for you to share your wisdom to us. So my first point is this: why should we study forests? I'll take a small example. You may have seen a flower called as the hibiscus rosa sinensis. I think almost everybody has seen it. When it flowers, the entire plant is full of flowers, big flowers, colorful flowers. But my next question is, have you ever seen the fruit in a hibiscus plant? Yes. Anybody else? Just think of the last hibiscus plant you saw. Did you see a large number of fruits hanging down? No. Very rarely, maybe just one or two. But then, now third question is, why does the plant produce all these flowers if it is not going to produce any fruits? Why? As a charity program. The plant understands that there's a lot of butterflies flying around, they will be famished, and so I produce nectar for them. But nature doesn't do that. Nature doesn't do any charity. It doesn't do anything wasteful. അത്യാവശ്യമുള്ള കാര്യം മാത്രം ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു സംവിധാനമാണ് nature. So, but then here we have a situation where we have a large number of flowers put up there, biomass ഉണ്ടാക്കണം, color has to be added, but absolutely wasted. No fruits are coming up. Why is it so? എന്തുകൊണ്ടായിരിക്കും? But even if pollination is happening, nectar ഉണ്ട്. Everything is perfect. Chebaltipo is a classic flower with
Is
a
it a
bow.
food chain? Is it common?
No, butterflies feed on the nectar.
To make it more attractive so that people break the branch and then you can plant it.
Can I know your name, sir?
Sudarshan Kumar.
So give a big clap to him. That's right. Now what the plant is trying to say is that, see, look at me, how beautiful are my flowers, would you like to take me? So what we do is to take a branch, take it to a new place. Now the problem is that if you go to a natural forest, if you find a flower there, definitely a fruit will be there. കാട്ടിന് ഒരു പൂവുണ്ടായാൽ ഉറപ്പായിട്ട് കായ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, because man is not a major player there. Man doesn't do things there. It is not just hibiscus. കോളാമ്പി പൂ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? മഞ്ഞ നിറത്തിലുള്ള കോളാമ്പി പൂ, അതിൽ കായ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? Now if you go back to your home, look at your garden, you will find that almost all the plants you have over there are just for making you amused. നിങ്ങളെ സന്തോഷിപ്പിക്കാനുള്ളതാണ് അത് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. It is not part of what happens in nature. Nature, if you want to know how nature works, there are only two places we can go and study. ഒന്ന് കാടാണ്, രണ്ടാമത്തത് കടലാണ്. ഈ രണ്ട് സ്ഥലത്ത് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എങ്ങനെയാണ് നേച്ചർ സ്വാഭാവികമായിട്ട് പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്നതെന്ന് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റും. നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ വീട്ടിൽ പണ്ടൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന ഒരു ആചാരം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. രാവിലെ എഴുന്നേറ്റാല് ആദ്യം ചെയ്യുന്നൊരു കാര്യം മുറ്റമടിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതായിരുന്നു. കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? അതാണ് നമ്മൾ പണ്ട് ചെയ്തിരുന്ന ആദ്യം ചെയ്തിരുന്ന പ്രകൃതി വിരുദ്ധ പരിപാടി. നേച്ചർ ഇസ് ട്രൈ ടു കം ടു അസ്. അത് കരിയിലെ ഏറ്റവും ചെറിയ നാമ്പുകളായിട്ട് വരും. അപ്പം നമ്മൾ വരെ ഇങ്ങോട്ട് വരണ്ട, പൊക്കോളെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മൾ അവരെ തിരിച്ചടയ്ക്കും. നമ്മൾ വേറെ സ്പേസ് ഉണ്ടാക്കി ജീവിക്കുകയാണ്. നേച്ചർ ഡോണ്ട് കം ഹിയർ എന്നാണ് നമ്മളെപ്പോഴും പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. സോ വി ആർ പീപ്പിൾ ഹു ആർ ലുക്കിംഗ് സ്റ്റഡിങ് ഫോറസ്റ്റ് ജസ്റ്റ് ടു അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡ് ഹൗ നേച്ചർ ഓപ്പറേറ്റ്സ്. നാട്ടിൽ നമുക്കത് പഠിക്കാൻ പറ്റും, ബിക്കോസ് ദ എൻറ്റയർ സിനാരിയോ ഹാസ് ബീൻ കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി മോഡിഫൈഡ് ബൈ ഹ്യൂമൻ ബീങ്സ്. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് സയൻറ്റിസ്റ്റുകൾ പറയുന്നത് വി ഹാവ് ക്രോസ്ഡ് എ era called Holocene and we have moved over to Anthropocene, where the impact of human activities can be seen on every part of the globe. You go to the poles, you go to the deep sea, എല്ലായിടത്തും മനുഷ്യന്റെ സിഗ്നേച്ചർ വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞു. ആ ഇറക്കാണ് നമ്മൾ Anthropocene എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. We have entered Anthropocene. Now, in the few slides, this topic had been decided at least a month before. So the idea was to take examples from nature which can be useful lessons for management. So that's the basic idea. So I will run through that and then come back to the current environmental scenarios in Kerala. Can I have a slide? Yeah, fine. So I'm going to look at the structure of our organization. Next slide. Yeah, this is how normally organizations are set up. We have some guy at the top, and then we have a branching down structure. So this is how normally organizations, companies, even my institution, we have a director at top, then we have the registrar, registrar. So this is a structure which we are very familiar with. So this is our normal management structure. But nature has got a totally different structure. Can I have the next slide? Now this is how nature is connected. It is not a top-down thing. It is connected to everybody. The CEO just doesn't come and rush to the room. The CEO will stop and talk to the security person for a while. So it is all connected. And when you connect everybody together, that creates an intelligence by itself. Like for example, I think you might have been in many of the WhatsApp groups. Every WhatsApp group has got its own ambience, right? Every WhatsApp group has its own ideology, right? Every WhatsApp group has got its own energy, right? Which is different from another group. So now, if you make an organization like this, which everybody is connected to everybody else, just like which is happening in nature, it has its own intelligence coming out. So that is how nature operates. And why do we look at nature to learn? Basically because nature has outlived we people. We have been here on the planet for a very short time, up to some age. But nature has been doing this game for large millions of years. So nature knows better. So they understand that. And the story that the lion is the king of the forest is absolutely wrong. There's no king in the forest. Everybody can be a king at any moment of time. Like a fungus can be a king. You can see a big tree, a very tall tree, which can be killed by just by a small fungus. You can kill it, and the tree will never be able to come back. There are pathogens, microbes, bacteria, virus, which can completely kill the top predator. You know what a invisible virus could do to Homo sapiens a few years before. Completely close the whole world. The whole world came to a standstill because of a very small organism. So that's how nature operates. There's no king out there. Everybody can be king at any point of time. But then the whole thing is becoming very much more stable than our institutional structures. Next. Now I'll conclude a very interesting case, a take-home message. At some points of time, there's a process called sexual selection happening in animals. And sexual selection, the basic premise is that every males are basically very beautiful, right? Of all, you take any species, the males are the beautiful ones. Why? The peacock, you take elephant, any species, butterflies. Males are so beautiful basically because it is the female who selects the mate. It's basically the female's choice, not the male's choice. So all males try to be very beautiful in front of females. That's why males compete. The best example is a peacock. What is a peacock trying to say? Peacock is trying to say that, see, look, I am so beautiful. I have a long tail. I have a very big tail. And now the problem is that this big tail is a big problem. If a predator comes, this is going to be a big baggage. Its life may be gone. But what the male is trying to tell the female is that, see, my tail is very big, but still I am alive. That proves that I am smart enough. So marry me. So this is the message given to the peafowl. Now what peafowl do? Peafowl selects the male with the longest tail. So then what happens? The kids are all with long tails, right? Because the father has got a long tail. So all male offsprings will be having long tails. But in that generation also, the female selects the biggest tail. Now across generations, what happens is that the tail becomes longer and longer. So this process is called as sexual selection. But next slide. So, have you ever met with this particular organism? It is the Irish elk. Irish elk is a species which has gone to the extreme sexual selection. So there the sexual character. For peacock, the sexual character is the tail, but here it is the horns. So the horns became so big because across generations the females were selecting the biggest horn. And it became so big that it could not live with it. When a predator comes, it runs, but it gets entangled in the forest. That species came to extinction just because of that. So the take-home message is, next. It can lead to extinction. Next. Now this is an interesting guy, Leibig. Leibig was a chemist. He was from Germany. He was the person, he went over to agriculture, fertilizers, things like that. He came up with this very interesting principle called the law of limiting resources. So in every system, a system will be running based on many different ingredients. But the dynamics of the whole system will be decided by the resource which is in short supply, not by the resource which is abundantly available. That is his theory. So the yield of a particular crop, there are many different things working. It needs magnesium, potassium, it needs calcium, it needs sunlight. But then that single factor, which is in low availability, will be going to decide the fate of the system. So if you translate that into management things, you can understand that you have an organization in place, and the weakest link is going to decide your fate. It is not the strongest linkages. It is the weakest link which is going to be very important. So if you want to run a good management system, be careful about the weakest links, not about the strongest links. Next. Now this is something which age-old Darwin came up. He went to the Galapagos Islands. He was traveling in the ship as a biologist. He went over there, he found a bird which is quite similar to our crow. But then he looked at the different islands, and different islands had different finches. And this is exactly the point from where the concept of origin of species or natural selection sprang up. There was a species which radiated to different islands, and based on the food availability out there, its shape of the beak changed. You look at the different beaks. Some are good for eating plants, some are good for eating insects, some are good for cracking nuts. So they radiated. So the way in which life had been celebrating itself on this planet is by producing newer and newer species, by radiating to use almost all the resources available out there. Next. Now the lesson is that just like the species adapt, organization has to be flexible and adaptable to changing market conditions, technologies, and customer needs. Don't get stuck anywhere. You need to always have this potential to radiate, potential to move ahead, potential to explore new resources. Is that clear? Shall I move ahead? Next. Now, this is a very interesting role, Shelford's law of tolerance. Now, if you have ever worked in an institution, you would have experienced the different tolerance level of people. And Shelford says that there's an optimum range for each one of us. We have an optimum range of accepting abuses. We have an optimum range of accepting firing. We have an optimum range of accepting work times. So we have an optimal range. And beyond that, there's a time space to which we can briefly adapt. Like for example, this place. This is our optimum range. And this is a zone of physiological stress on both sides, and then zone of death or avoidance. So whenever you're working, what you need to do is to make sure that you remain yourself well within the tolerance limit. If you are moving towards the other extremes, you'll be undergoing stress, and secondly, and if you push yourself much further, you will die. So Shelford says that for every organism, there is a tolerance limit. So it is from a management point of view, it is not just for you. It is also for the people whom you manage. Make sure that they are well within their tolerance limit. Don't push them to the extremes. Next. Yeah, there's another very interesting principle, which is called as a competitive explosion principle. To understand that, we need to define one single word, which is called as niche. And what is a niche? Niche is basically a multi-dimensional space. Multi-dimensional in the sense that the time. So, like for example, what is my niche? My niche is the time at which I am living, the space I am occupying in the planet, the food I am taking, the other species which are feeding on me. So all these things come together, and that is a multi-dimensional space, and that is my niche. Is that clear? For a crow, where does it live? What time does it live? What it feeds on? What are the other species which can feed on it? So all these things come together, and that is the concept called niche. We have our own niches. And what does the competitive exclusion principle say? Next. Which essentially means that if a husband and wife has got the exactly same niche, the divorce is going to happen. We normally feel that people with the same taste live together. It's the other way around. It is the maximum the difference, the longer you can accommodate. You need that sort of diversity. Like for example, you have a water body, you have two different species of fishes. If the two fishes has got the exactly same requirement, they feed on the same thing, they occupy the same level in the water, only one is going to be there, the other will be competitively excluded. So make sure that nobody competitively excludes you, and make sure that you don't competitively exclude any other people. That's the best management way you can take an organization forward. Next. Now, very interesting phenomenon from the understanding of nature is that always, diversity leads to stability. If you have an organization, in every organization you will have one individual whom people think that is the right person, is the right employee, with all the required qualities, a model employee. And you will be forced to clone that person and make a large number of people, and to run the institute, you are going to fail. The largest diversity you have in your organization is going to be more stable. Don't go for, when you are recruiting people, don't recruit from the same college. Or recruit from different colleges, from different states, from different districts, because the differences which they bring in are going to make the whole thing stable. You don't think of an ideal person and don't clone that person to make many people. That's going to be a very dangerous thing. The first picture is of a plantation, a teak plantation, and the second is the natural forest. The difference is that the teak plantation fails after some time, because there will not be any resources in the soil. The texture of the soil changes, it becomes much more rocky, the productivity comes down, and the whole thing fails. But on the other side, the natural forest, it thrives for a long number of years without any external inputs. So whenever you have a system, make sure that it is as diverse as possible so that it can be more stable. Next. Now we come to relationships. There are three major types of relationships. The first one on top, flower and the bee. We call the relationship as mutualism, because in that relationship both are benefited. The flower gets pollinated and the bee gets the honey, right? So both the species are benefited because of their relationship. Come to the second one, which is called as commensalism, where you have a shark and a barnacle, and the barnacle attaches to the shark. So what it feeds on, the shark is a wasteful feeder. So when it feeds, many of the part of the things fall down, and the barnacle feeds on that. And barnacle is benefited, but there is no benefit for shark. So that is the relationship which we call as the commensalism. And then we have the parasitism, the cat and the tick. And the cat is not going to gain anything out of the relationship. The tick gets the blood of cat, but cat is not at all benefited. So that is what we call as parasitism. So now start thinking about how many of your friends are parasites, how many of them are mutualists, how many of them are commensals. So if you stand a bit away from yourself and look at you from a long distance, you can see ourselves as a species operating over there with a lot of other species interacting with you, other people interacting. And you can use this method to understand what is the relationship which we have with other people. This will make you much more learned person. Next. This is a very interesting question. On screen is a cat and a dog. And what is the difference between a cat and a dog? Is there anybody who owns a cat here? Yes. And a dog? Yes. So what is the difference between a cat and a dog? ഇവർ തമ്മിൽ എന്തോ പ്രശ്നമുണ്ടല്ലേ പൂച്ചയും നായ തമ്മിൽ തലമുറകളിലൂടെ കൈമാറി വരുന്ന എന്തോ ഒരു വഴക്ക് ഒരു ജന്മജന്മാന്തര ഒരു ഇനി സോൾവ് ആവാത്ത ഒരു ഫ്യൂഡ് വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നതൊക്കെ തോന്നും പക്ഷേ ബേസിക്കലി വാട്ട് ഇസ് ദ ഡിഫറൻസ് ബിറ്റ്വീൻ എ കാറ്റ് ആൻഡ് എ ഡോഗ് ദ ഡിഫറൻസ് ഈസ് ദാറ്റ് നമ്മൾ രണ്ടുപേരെ സ്നേഹിക്കും വി ലവ് ദ കാറ്റ് വി ലവ് ദ ഡോഗ് പക്ഷെ അവരുടെ പെർസ്പെക്റ്റീവ് എങ്ങനെയാണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ the dog is a species which will love you back. നമ്മളെ തിരിച്ച് സ്നേഹിക്കും ഭയങ്കര സ്നേഹമായിരിക്കും and at one point of time it will may die for us. നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടി മരിക്കാൻ പോലും ഡോഗ് തയ്യാറാവും അത്രമാത്രം അത് അറ്റാച്ച്ഡ് ആയിരിക്കും പൂച്ച ആ പണിക്ക് കിട്ടൂല ഇത് പൂച്ച വിചാരിക്കുന്നത് എന്താ വെച്ചാൽ ഡോഗ് വിചാരിക്കുന്നത് എന്താ വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ see this man is or this woman is giving me food shelter so it is my responsibility to give back. ഇതാണ് ഡോഗിന്റെ ആറ്റിറ്റ്യൂഡ് കാറ്റിന്റെ ആറ്റിറ്റ്യൂഡ് എന്താ വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ see I am being treated well because I am a great person. ഞാൻ ഭയങ്കര കഷ് ചെയ്യുന്നതാണ് ഇവരെന്നെ സ്നേഹിക്കുന്നത് അല്ലാതെ ഞാൻ തിരിച്ച് അങ്ങോട്ട് സ്നേഹിക്കേണ്ട ഒരു ആവശ്യമുണ്ടെന്ന് കാറ്റിന് ഒരിക്കലും തോന്നുന്നില്ല ആൻഡ് കാറ്റ് ഡസന്റ് ലവ് യു ഓൾസോ ഇറ്റ് മേ ഡിസപ്പിയർ ഓൺ എ വൺഡേ ഒരു ദിവസം പെട്ടെന്ന് പൂച്ച കാണാതായിട്ട് വരും പിന്നെ കുറേ കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടൊക്കെ സർഫസ് ചെയ്യും വാട്ട് ദ കാറ്റ് ലവ്സ് ഇസ് ദ ആംബിയൻസ് ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് എ സ്പേസ് യു പ്രൊവൈഡ് ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് നോട്ട് ലവിങ് യു ആസ് എ പേഴ്സൺ ഡോഗ് അങ്ങനെയല്ല ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് നോട്ട് ലവിങ് ദ സ്പേസ് ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് ലവിങ് ദ പേഴ്സൺ ഇതാണ് രണ്ട് വ്യത്യാസം നൗ ഫ്രം മാനേജ്മെന്റ് പെർസ്പെക്റ്റീവ് the question is are you a cat or a dog? You're working in an institution organization you can have two different standpoints. You can feel that this organization is giving me a salary and it is based on the salary which I am living, so it is my responsibility to give everything back to the organization. That's a dog's point of view. The cat's point of view is that this organization has hired me because I am a great guy. So I decide how things are to be. So this is the difference between the dog's attitude and the cat attitude. Now our question is this: who am I? Am I taking a cat's position or I am taking a dog's position? And the best position to take is next. You need to be a cat at some point of time, and you need to be a dog at another point of time. Okay, next. And efficiency. Nature essentially moves forward by discovering the best method to do something. That is why if you go to a forest, you never see waste. There's nothing called waste in the forest. But you come outside the forest, it's filled with waste. Why is it so? Because nature always invents the best way to manage resources. In the forest, every waste is there's no waste, and if at all something comes up with it, that is treated as a resource. So every organization, every management leader needs to look at opportunities to make all the entire resources usable, so that you can reduce the impact on the planet, you can reduce the carbon footprint, and you can take the thing to a much better level. Next. Have you seen this bird? It's called as a racket-tailed drongo. Well, the racket-tailed drongo teaches you that friends and foes are not forever. A friend yesterday can be a foe today. A foe today can be a friend the next day. What it does, it's a wonderful mimicry artist. This bird, it can make different types of sounds. Like for example, if some birds are feeding over there, it will just come sit on a branch and make the sound of a cat. And the birds will be scared and they will fly away, and then drongo will come and eat it. It can produce large number of sounds. It displaces people. But at the same time, when bird flocks are there, when a predator comes in, it tells the birds that a predator is coming. So it acts both ways. It is a friend at times, it is a foe at other times. So when you are in an organization, don't think that a friend is a friend forever. And a foe is not a foe forever. So things can change. Next. Now, lastly, what we have learned from nature is that we can have a healthy life only if the other organisms around are also healthy. We cannot just be healthy by ourselves. The best example is the Nipah outbreak which we have in Kerala. It is 5th time we have having it in India. Now what is happening? There's a virus, the Nipah virus, inside the fruit-eating bats called as the flying foxes, and it jumps into fruits which people take, and it can cause a disease to human beings. We call it the species jump, the micro jumping from one species to another species. But why does it jump? It jump basically when the health of the bat has gone down. And interestingly, this bat doesn't live in the forest. It is a non-forest species. It has its roots outside forest areas, on tall trees, on sacred groves. And when we cut them out, they will have to find the next best alternative. And bat flies, but it is not a bird, it's a mammal. It doesn't fly just like the bird flies. So if this is a branch, and if a bat is hanging down, it can fly only after falling down. It cannot just fly from the branch like other birds do. So it needs tall trees, but all the tall trees are gone. We expand our roads, and all the trees on the sides are completely being chopped out. So what do they do? They go to the next best high places. And when that happens, bats from many places come over there, there's crowding happening, and then there's a huge competition of space and resources. The health of some of the bats will be going down. And when the health goes down, the parasites which are living inside try to escape. We all know that. മനുഷ്യൻ മരിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് നമ്മൾ മൂക്കിൽ പഞ്ഞു വെക്കും. എന്തിനാ വെക്കുന്ന? രണ്ടാമത് ശ്വാസം കഴിച്ച് എഴുന്നേറ്റ് വരാതിരിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയാണോ? അല്ല, വച്ചിട്ടില്ലെങ്കിൽ അത് ഉള്ളിലുള്ള പല ജീവികളും പുറത്തേക്ക് ചാടും. Because the temperature of the body goes down, they try to escape. Adepole, when the health of the bat goes down, the parasites try to escape. They jump out, and that is the time at which they jump to human beings. So the best way to stop Nipah is to make sure that the bats are happy, bats are healthy. Now this is true for many organisms. Long back, we had a feeling that our body is of one single species, which is called by my name. My name is Sajeev. So I thought that this is Sajeev, but this is not Sajeev. There's a large number of organisms living inside and outside me. My gut has got tremendous number of bacteria, which helps to digest the food I take in. And at times, when we say that we are hungry, it is not that we are hungry, it is the bacteria which are hungry. And they are telling us to take some food, we are feeling famished. Now, there are a large number of species living. And I am happy, I am healthy, only if they all are happy. So that is the lesson which we have learned from the diseases which are happening, and which is a take-home message for management. In a management scenario, in a large organization, you cannot be healthy by yourself. You'll be happy only if others are also happy. But we don't normally think that way. We think that we are happy when we hurt somebody. No, it's not that way. I'm happy when all others working with me are also happy. And another lesson from nature is this: never compete with anybody except yourself. There's a way to improve yourself. Don't fight with others. There's absolutely no point in fighting with any other person. Maybe the next day the person will be dead, and there's nobody for you to fight with, and you are not going to improve. And next, it is not the strongest that survives. Darwin didn't say that. Darwin didn't say that it is the strongest which is going to survive, but it is the most adaptable one which is going to survive. Have you ever heard anybody from Karnataka here? Karnataka? Yes. So Basavanna, you might be knowing. There's a very famous saying by Basavanna. Basavanna പറഞ്ഞത് നിവർന്നവർ തകർന്നു പോയി, ചരിഞ്ഞു നിന്നവർ പിടിച്ചു നിന്നു എന്ന് പറയും. When a big storm comes, the trees which were standing very tall, they broke down. But the grass which could sway, they swayed, the storm went through, and they came back. So this is a principle. So be flexible, be adaptable. So that is the lesson which we learn from nature. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sajeev. Now the floor is open for questions.
Sir, thank you very much for your. There is a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge in what you said,
Thank you.
and also comparing what the management does and what management should do. Couple of things what I always thought about it when you were doing the talking. We are talking about we and the nature. We forget that we are part of that nature. We think we are apart from the nature, but it's not true. We are part of the nature. And the second comment I would like to make is, the nature will survive, but I am not sure of the human beings. This is the second comment I want. Thank you.
A quick response to that, sir. We are part of nature, true. But then who we? That's a question. We were talking about in the present room earlier. Like for example, what happens is that I would say it this way: all the species on this planet, man is just another species. If all the species we were moving together, at one point of time, we human beings started to walk through a totally different line. This started with the Industrial Revolution, when we started to take coal from the underground and start burning. We changed the whole thing. But other species, they are moving just like that. Give you one example. A person told about the situation in Wayanad, where we had a huge landslide. Now, 2 days before that, there was a herpetological survey happening over there. There was a group of people who come from different parts of the country to study frogs. They were doing a survey of frogs. So they did the survey and they went back. Just 2 days after, this huge landslide happened. And those guys, they rewinded the things which happened during their survey. And they, to their astonishment, they remembered that when they went for the frog survey, they could not hear the frogs. All the frogs were silent. And that they discovered only after this event happened, which means that the frogs had moved and they have become so subdued. They had gone to escape our places and they were completely camouflaged to escape from the big calamity. Elephants, not a single elephant carcass has been discovered. When we had a tsunami in Kollam, Alapi, only domestic animals which were tied got killed. Every others escaped. When the tsunami struck Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the tribal people, the indigenous people, they escaped. They might not have known the word tsunami, but they knew something is going to happen and they climbed uphill and they escaped. What is happening with we people is that our social evolution is moving so fast that the biological evolution is not able to catch it. We are moving so fast. Now that is the big problem which we face. So that is why we call that at times we will have to say that we are not that much part of nature as other species are. But the other statement is very true. Thank you, sir.
Sir, hi. So whenever the landslide and all such things happens, people start talking about Garfield report and the P.T. Thomas viral speech and all that. So we're not too sure about what is Madhu Garfield's report. People talk about Garfield's report, but we're not too sure about what is that report. And what's your opinion about it, sir? Is it implementing that to solve all the issues, or what's your point on that?
I'll try to tell what the government report is in just 2-3 minutes. Now see, the Western Ghats is a very old mountain system. It was evolved not like Himalaya is a very recent mountain system. It's still growing. It's a young system. Ours is a very old system. That is why we have such a big biodiversity out here. Now Western Ghats have been exploited in a big way, and the Ministry of Environment and Forest decided to have a study to understand how this mountain system can be protected. So they assigned the book to a committee, and Professor Madhus Galvi was the head of the committee. And what the committee did was, they wrote down their methodology on how they are going to do the book, and they published it in one of the journals called the Current Science. So we all scientists could learn what they are going to do. We could respond to that, and it was perfected, and that methodology was adopted. And the methodology was very simple. It was like this. They divided the entire Western Ghats area into grids of 9 kilometers into 9 kilometers. And for each grid, each cell, they collected information on 18 different parameters. And these parameters include elevation, slope, aspect, vegetation, susceptibility to landslides, erosion, cultural features, presence of endemic animals of birds or other species which are just found there. So based on, there were 18 parameters. And based on the 18 parameters, they assigned a value to each of these cells. And for every cell which had a value more than the cells of natural forests, they assigned as the ecological sensitivity zone 1. That's the highest category. And the next below was the zone 2, and then that was the zone 3. And then they decided what can be done at each of the places and what cannot be done. So zone 1 was so precious, so susceptible to landslides, erosions, etc. It was told that mining has to be stopped there. Whatever mining is happening has to be phased out in 3 years. For zone 2, they told that the mining has to be phased out in 5 years. And zone 3, you can do mining because mining resources are also needed. So it was basically a structured classification of the whole landscape and telling what to do where. So this is what Galvi committee did. But basically what happened was that when the report came out, one of the most influential people across the Western Ghats found that their business is going to be affected, especially the mining and the quarrying industries. So they came up with a large amount of arguments, and the government was forced to put up another committee. Actually, that committee was formed, which was headed by Dr. Lederinsight. The objective was to come up with ways in which Galvi committee report can be implemented. But on the other hand, what they did was that they prepared a parallel report altogether. So what they did was to reduce the area. There were 3 classifications in Galvi committee report. Ecosystem studies were 1, 2, and 3. In custodial committee report, you don't have 3 classes. It is just the ecological sensitive zone, and the area got reduced. And later on, one more report came, which was done by Dr. Umen in Kerala, which further reduced the whole area. Now, at the end of the Umen committee report, what happened was that only the reserve forest, which is already protected, needs to be protected. So everybody was excluded. So this is the story in brief.
Good evening, sir. So my question, as an MBA student, my question is that what can managers learn from the resilience and regeneration of ecosystem?
Yeah, good question. My problem is that word, ecosystem. What do you mean by that word, ecosystem?
Ecosystem is like
Because you managers robbed that word from ecology and took it away. And now you have your own definition for ecosystem.
No. Ecosystem is ecosystem for everyone. It's all the living organisms and all.
Fact. Okay. Because this robbery happens. It was Eugene P. Odom was a famous ecologist who coined the term ecosystem. So now, recently I hear people saying that the communication ecosystem. So everybody speaks of ecosystem. When they never understand the whole dynamics, they call it an ecosystem. So, industrial ecosystem. But the whole scenario is not at all clear. This is a nice word to fill the gap. So that's my concern. But, the resilience of ecosystem comes from the interlinkages. Basically, ecosystem is a place where 2 things travel. One is nutrients, like many different elements, like iron, sulfur, potassium, things like that, calcium. So there's a nutrient flow happening. The second is the flow of energy. And energy, there is only one source, it is the sun. So we all use that energy. Even if the sound I'm using now, just at one point of time, got from the sun. The plants lock it, we feed on them, and we get that energy. So it's a ecosystem is a place where energy flows and also nutrient flows. And if that flows in such a way that there's absolutely very little loss happening, we call it as a best ecosystem. So that is what is happening. Now, in schools, we learn that a pond is an ecosystem. There is a classical example which we teach our kids. So pond becomes an ecosystem because there is a process in which there are some people who captures the solar energy, locks it in their body. We call them the primary producers. They produce food. And some others feed on those plants. We call it the consumers, primary consumers. And some others feed on those primary consumers. We call the secondary consumers. It's a whole chain. That is what we call as a food chain. But then we understood that it's not a simple linear chain. There's a lot of chains getting connected. So we call it as a web. So there's a food web operating. So that is the process through which both nutrients and the solar energy moves. So when that happens with largest production of biomass, we call it the best ecosystem. But now that is becoming, and you can see how that works in an institution also. How the whole knowledge travels across things. And like for example, if the CEO tells something, you can see after 5 steps, the whole message would have been changed to do something different. There will be changes happening, and we call this not a good quality of an ecosystem. We need to maintain the flow. We need to make the loss as minimum as possible. So that is one way in which we do that. Getting connected rather than a top-down hierarchy. We have a network system. You can reduce the loss happening. So that is something which can be experimented. But surely I will think about it.
I need a clarification, it's not clear to me. You showed the picture of a peacock, and it's very beautiful. And you said the peahens try to attract the most beautiful peacock. But in the human race, does it translate the same way? I want to quote one incident. In Chennai, in Conmara Hotel, there's a room where the boy from Silicon Valley flies down for a week, and he sits in front of a screen, and 15 girls, they're paraded one after the other, and he picks on one, goes back, comes back, and gets married to her, and goes back. Second contradiction I find is we have Miss India, Miss Kerala, Miss World, Miss Universe, but we don't have Miss, not Mr. or whatever it is, corresponding to. There's not even a name. Mr. is for the guys with bulging muscles and all that, which I don't think the girls will prefer. So, can you clear this confusion?
Your good name?
Matthews.
Matthews. Thank you very much, sir. You reminded me of a story which I thought not telling here. Now I have to tell that. It's a personal experience. I was in the forest. We went for a walk in the forest and we were returning. Along with me was my friend Rashid Ali. Rashid Ali is the nephew of Sajeev, our birdman. So we were just 2 of us. We had been out there in the forest, and we thought that it was going to rain, and we didn't have any umbrellas or any raincoat. So we thought of coming back. So what we already had was a field book, a pen, and a cap. So we were returning back, and our vehicle was far away. So we had some distance to cover before the rain comes. We need to finish the vehicle. We came out of the forest, and there was a small opening with small shrubs there. And immediately we heard a sound like zzz, the sound was there. We stopped, looked at it, and we found a peacock, completely full-on tail, just dancing. The rain was about to come. And we thought, stopped there. It was so nice seeing that we stopped looking at it. Then we observed that there was a female nearby. A female peahen was there, but the peahen was not at all looking at the male. The male was trying to impress upon her, but then the female was not at all responding. She was busy feeding, pecking on the soil, not at all looking at the male. The male did a full circle around her. Still then the female was not impressed. And then this guy, what he did was that he completely closed the tail. And then with extra sound, it came back again. And that is a beautiful picture. It was dancing around it. Then the female was just raising the head but not really impressed. We were looking at it. Then what happened was that we found a small movement on the other side of this small clearing, and another peacock was coming in. We thought it was a female because it didn't have any big tail. But then it walked in, and immediately this female went along with that peacock. They disappeared. This poor guy, after all this dance, he was nothing to say about it. So now see, I told Rashid, now we are in serious trouble than the peacock. Rashid asked me why. I told him, see, our theory has been broken. We have to invent a new theory to explain this behavior. Now, this is what happens in life. If you're working in chemistry, if you're working in physics, you don't have this problem because you are working with static things. You start working in biology, life becomes very difficult because they evolve, they change, their behavior changes. And to answer your question, in human beings, what happens is that we have evolved a mechanism where marriage is not looked upon as a natural pairing, but as an economic activity. Our basic interest is to make sure that the money doesn't go out. Try to make sure that the money remains in your caste, the money remains in your religion, so that is a priority. So it is basically a distribution of money which happens in human marriages. It is not a natural phenomenon. So that's a reason.
It's not a fully convincing answer.
But at times truth is not very convincing.
Good evening, sir. My name is Naina. It was quite interesting presentation. I would like to ask something different from the management principles. What I heard from your intro was that you have done some research on African snake. Okay, I am living in an independent house, and after the morning walk, my next routine is to catch all these African snakes. So I heard that the snails will travel for kilometers underground. I am not sure whether it is correct or not. So what is your research done, and how to get rid of these things? Of course, this is a part of the nature, I agree, but it's a nuisance for us. So any solution for that?
Thanks. It is really a nuisance. And when I spoke of all these living beings, it is not just a beautiful picture. What happens is that when a species moves to a new area, new location, what happens is that it escapes from its own predators. And there is nothing to check its population size, and the population explodes. That is what happens with invasion. It has happened with many plants over here. Communist it is an invasive species, come from South America. Came along with our PL480 program, in which we had a huge poverty here. We were importing wheat, and it came as a contaminant in the wheat. And it became and there is no animal which feeds on communist vegetation, provided not a right. So that is why its population increases. As there is the antenna camera, there is nothing to feed on them. So what happens when a species is lifted from its own native range, and when it reaches a new place, it escapes from the predators and its population explodes. That is what happened with giant African snake. It came to Kerala, interestingly, long back. It was brought to Kerala by a person who went to Singapore and bought 5 snails and brought it to Parliament to do research. So he was interested to do his PhD on this snail at Annamalai University, basically because on the reproductive biology. Reproductivity, this snail is very interesting in the sense that every snail has got both the male and female reproductive organs. We call it as a hermaphrodite. So he was going to study that, but he could not pursue his PhD because his father died. So he just left the snails out, and it became a small outbreak in Palakkad long back. And at that point of time, the district authorities put out a advertisement saying that people will be given one paisa if they produce one snail. So it started, and by the end of 1 week, the program was stopped because the huge number of snails were being bought, and the district administration had not enough money to pay back. Now later on, that population perished, and then what happened was that we had been importing timber from Myanmar. And Myanmar is one country which continued to cut the natural forest, even after other countries stopped cutting natural forest, because Myanmar, it is a military who is ruling there. They are just exploiting the country, selling whatever is available, making money out of it. And Myanmar is a thoroughly snail-infested country. So the timber comes to our Wellington Island, and it is stored there for some time. And the entire Wellington Island became so snail-infested. There are line quarters there of port authorities, of railway. They all left the quarters because of a huge snail invasion. There was one judge in Kerala High Court whose wife got this cerebral meningitis because of the nematode in the snail. He had narrated the very painful life of him. His wife was a doctor. She was a gynecologist. She had this tremendous headache. They consulted all the hospitals here. Then went to Sri Chitra General Hospital at Trivandrum. They were admitted. They could not identify the reason. So she was just put under observation. And one day, there was a hairline in the eye, and they understood that it's a nematode. They pulled out the nematode, and she was squared. So it can cause human problem also. Now the way to manage it cannot travel underground, but it can be underground for almost a year, because just after the rain it will go underground, and then it will surface only next year. So that is the problem of managing it. People will believe that the snails are gone, but it was not gone. It comes back the next year. There are many ways of managing it. You can use salt. If the population is very low, you can use a tobacco decoction plus copper sulfate solution. If the population is much more high.
It is not effective.
Pardon?
It is not effective.
Which one? Tobacco decoction plus copper sulfate.
No, it is not effective.
Sir, salt is ideal.
Salt is ideal.
Salt is okay, but the
Salt
problem is that
solution.
the number is very high. The problem is it will start to decay and it will produce foul smell. But tobacco decoction plus copper sulfate makes sure that it doesn't decay. Natural activity will be stopped. But interestingly, there are some predators which are working on this particular snail. We have a few predators here. One is the crow pheasant. It feeds on small snakes. Duck feeds on small snakes.
Snails are visible only on night, during night.
Yeah.
Who will be?
But when the population increases a particular threshold, it will be seen on the daytime
Later
also.
also.
And then another interesting predator which is the glowworm. മിന്നാമിനിങ്ങ നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞു നടക്കുന്ന മിന്നാമിനിങ്ങകളെല്ലാം ആണുങ്ങളാണ്. പെൺമിന്നാമിനിങ്ങ പക്കലാവില്ല. It will be just like a worm. Yes, just like a worm. It can only walk. So that feeds on a snail. So when we go out for observations at night, we can see a snail walking, and there will be a few glowworms walking parallelly and eating it while you're still walking. And wherever the snail outbreaks happen, the number of fireflies are gone up. So there are different ways of managing.
I think that will be the last question. You can.
So with my limited knowledge, I'm very curious to know about a thing that is nature feeding us, or are we food for the nature? Is nature in the recent scenarios, we have a lot of natural disasters happening, right? So is nature getting hungrier, or we getting greedy?
What's the name?
My name is Aditya.
Aditya.
Yeah.
Great question. This is a question which is being discussed all across. And the very best way to put the question is that we all beings are the agriculture of bacteria. They are culturing human beings so that they can eat later. Just like we do agriculture. The bacteria are growing human beings so that they can eat a bit later. What happens is that in nature, not single individual matters. It is the species which matter. In conservation also, we don't look at individuals, we look at the whole species, whether the species is conserved or not. So it is just like looking from which point of view. There's a very interesting quote in Malayalam. ഈ പരിണാമം തുടങ്ങിയത് അമീബയിൽ നിന്നാണെന്നും അവസാനം എത്തി നിൽക്കുന്ന മനുഷ്യനാണെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞത് അമീബയല്ല മനുഷ്യനാണ്. Our way of looking at it. Other species will have their way of looking at it. They're just like the example which I spoke to you about the cat and the dog. They have their own perspectives of looking at the whole world. Now, things are getting much more muddier. The young generation is asking very, very different questions. And people are trying to convince them about very stark reality. I have a scientist friend. He asked me, sir, could you give me some example to prove that the earth is round? So, I asked him why. Now the problem is that his son is studying in 6th standard. He is a member of the flat earth community. And he believes that earth is flat. So the scientist is trying level best to get some information to make proof that the earth is round at his kid. Because a lot zombies are coming. New stories are coming. The younger generation is being taken off by totally different stories. Like for example, the BTS. I'm sure if a BTS guy comes over to Kerala, it is just like going to be Pied Piper. He will sing and the entire kids will be going behind the person. Their parents will never know about it. The parents will never thought that the whole kids are big fans of the Korean music and they're dreaming of going to Korea. To have a look at them, hear them. So the situation is changing. And maybe later on, maybe a few years ahead, somebody will be coming here and giving you proof that we are being cultivated by another species. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Please take your seat, and I would request our Honorary Secretary Dr. Alan Joseph to propose a word of thanks.
Good evening all. President Gu, Treasurer Dilip, Vice President Ajay, and the man who taught us the lesson what we should learn from nature and become a good manager. Dr. TV Sajeev, Chief Scientist, Kerala Forest Research Institute. Thank you very much for that excellent lesson. Lot of people have done. So, couple of things which I would just like to ask the summary note. Don't push a winning formula too far ahead. A very worthy lesson to carry, and law of limiting resources, adaptive radiation, and diversity leads to stability. A very important aspect of it, because we all want all successful world. So diversity has to be brought into all the managerial system. It's a very valuable lesson given from the nature to all the corporate and the budding MBA students sitting over here. And most important thing, now I understood why the new generation is called cat. So we have a cat generation happening, and the dogs are very scared to find. So thank you for that wonderful lesson given to all of us. It was indeed a very fruitful and very interesting talk, very nature thing. And I was thinking that there will be too much of talk about what happened in Wayanad. And thank you for enlightening us regarding the different environmental or ecological studies which was conducted by Gadgil, then Kasturi Commission, and the women study, and how the ecological sensitive area got reduced. But then, yeah, as an engineer, I have my different thought on that, but I don't think it's the right forum to take it off. But I just share this thought for the MBA and other generations here. We live in a place, we have 3.6 crores of people, we have 600 kilometers of coast, or 600 to 700 kilometers coast. Then CRSL doesn't permit us to go to the sea. So we have to come inside. And within the sea, there are a lot of limitations CRSL zone. Then we have paddy field. Then the paddy fields is also nothing could be done because it's ecological sensitive. And then we have very little space, and then the Western Ghats comes. So where we live, 3.6 crore population live. And how we will balance? So we have to balance the system, and the mining is banned here. I just take this point because this was a topic which is connected to nature. Mining is banned here, no work is stopped. We get the material from Tamil Nadu, paying 5 times cost, or from Karnataka. We are not halting all the operations. Entire operations are happening. Yes, illegal mining has to be banned, but then we have to work out solutions to the problem. The development has to be part, and we all have to debate. And I still feel that yesterday's disaster was a natural disaster. It was bound to happen. It happened 8 kilometers away from human inhabitants. Yeah, 8 kilometers away from human inhabitants. There were no people living there. And just because of the nature had the heavy rainfall of 572 mm happening, the soil, which is very soft, got saturated. We have an IIT professor sitting in front of me from the civil department, Matthew sir, and it got saturated. It made a surface plane and it started rolling down, and that ended up in the tragedy. And yes, people were living there. That is a reason to increase the casualties. Otherwise, it would have happened in the forest. We would not known of. They go to Himalayas, also the glaciers comes in. I just leave this thought process with you. I don't want to continue the debate on this, but just think of that, because we see always we see the negative part of that. You have to balance. We are here to balance things and understand with development as well as the nature protection, with the climate change, also the environmental aspect. So again, now there is a lot of new theories why so much of rains are falling, and why there was this thing. So that we can, it's a new thing, but then I want our younger generation as well as the people in the managerial fraternity to think over this and understand what is the right solution to the problem. Now let us give a moment to our speaker who has done an excellent job, and I ask my president to do the honors. I would like to thank all the people who have joined us, and would like to acknowledge the presence of following MC members: Dr. Radha Tavinur, Anand, Algiers, our Vice President, and the man behind the show, Tom, and our immediate past President Balakrishnan sir and past President Shastri sir to be here, and all the members who regularly comes over here and make our every weekly meeting so lively. Thanks to all of you, and thanks to this younger generation who is going to make the change. And I would like to have a couple of more announcements coming up. Next week we have a Lederinsight session, relevance of the public sector in today's world, by Mr. Sajeev Kumar, Chairman of Board for Public Sector Transformation, Government of Kerala. And on August 16th we have Revolutionizing Rail Traffic Management by Mr. Anshu Gupta, former General Manager, Northern Railway, and our advisor, Rail Signaling Innovations. So look forward for your valuable presence here, and I would also like to thank our KMA team who is coordinating this event on every week, and look forward for seeing you in the next week program. And let's keep learning and trying to improve, and let us have our thought process and debate on what exactly is needed in the managerial aspect as well as our contribution back to the society, and let us produce more dogs which will be balancing with each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's all rise to the national anthem, please.
जनगण अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे